Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening for another virtual conversation. I am Karen Hansen in the Marketing and Communication Department here at Canines, and I will serve as moderator this evening. I do want to mention that we've had some power outages near our facility this afternoon and this evening, so if we suddenly disappear, we might have an early end to this, but we're gonna hope that is not the case. I think things are gonna be fine. If you do have a question you'd like to submit, you can do so by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and typing in your question to send. We will get to as many of those as we can before 8 o'clock, and we thank those of you that submitted questions ahead of time. That's very helpful for us. If you would like to use the closed captioning feature, that is available below. Just click on the live transcript icon and select Show Subtitle. I also want to acknowledge Paul, who is here as our ASL interpreter for this session. So thank you, Paul. Jeff Johnson, our executive director, is here along with Lindy Luopa, our puppy program manager, and Julianne Larson, our director of training. So I am going to go behind the scenes, let them share a few things with you first, and then I will be back. So I am going to kick this over to Jeff right now.
Great. Thank you, Karen. And thank you, Paul, for being with us tonight. We appreciate that. And thank you all for joining us. There is a lot that I could talk about. There are tons of things going on here, but I won't do that because we want to focus a bit more on prisons and your own questions. So I'll leave most of this out, but I want to share just a couple of highlights from the last few weeks. Lindy's team put on a volunteer summit. I think it was a couple of weekends ago. We had over 100 volunteers who were here for either half the day or the full day, and have had a lot of positive comments, but it was just further evidence of how committed and how important our volunteers are to us. And I want to thank Lindy and her team for putting that together, and also thank all the volunteers who both showed up for that, but also all the volunteers we have who maybe couldn't show up for that, that give us their homes and their families and their lives. So that was a highlight of the last couple of weeks. We also had a bill signing last Friday at the Capitol. We've been working for over a year on a bill that we crafted that would require landlords and HOAs to allow our volunteers to have our dogs in training in their homes or in their apartments, even if they have rules against dogs, or even if they charge for people to have dogs that live there, that would not apply. They would have to allow our volunteers now, or they will have to allow our volunteers now to train our dogs in their homes and their apartments, which is going to make a difference for us. It might not make a difference. We're not going to bring in hundreds of new volunteers, but we will bring in probably tens of new volunteers because of this. And it passed the House earlier this year, the Senate very recently, and the governor signed it last week. And it's the only public bill signing they've had this session because they haven't been able to get anything else done. So it's kind of fun that we were the highlight really of the session so far, and we got some great coverage out of that. And then finally, with respect to the capital campaign and the building plan hasn't really changed since we last talked several months ago, but we are moving forward with it. We've been meeting with the City of New Hope, which has been a wonderful partner of ours, and they are very supportive of us. We're starting to do some soil testing and some environmental testing. So if you're here, you're going to see some of that on the property, and just continuing to methodically move forward with what those plans look like. And then, of course, we've had the capital campaign, which we launched about 4 or 5 months ago, right at the end of December. Happy to report that as of last week, we've reached 40% of our $10 million goal. So we've raised just over $4 million. This is all part of what we call the quiet phase of the campaign, where we're not doing anything broad and public. We're just talking to individuals who already support us and have some capacity to give us larger gifts. And that it's been a wonderful success so far. We know it's going to go slow. It's going to be probably a 1.5 to 2 year long campaign, but we're moving forward with that. So just a few of the things that are happening here that have been kind of highlights of the last few weeks for us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julianne, and Julianne and Lindy are going to talk a bit more about some of the other things going on, and in particular, our prison program.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm Julianne Larson. I am the Director of Training. And right now, there's so many things happening and so many exciting things, as Jeff touched on the capital campaign and building plans. One of the things we're always doing is kind of looking for new prison partnerships. Right now, we don't have a weaning prison because our Duluth prison that was our weaning prison is kind of in limbo at the moment, maybe closing. They're not 100% sure yet what's happening there. So we are looking for a new weaning prison, and I have multiple kind of conversations in the works with hopefully 2 or 3 meetings with different wardens over the next 2 to 3 months. So we're very hopeful that we'll be adding 1 or 2 new weaning prisons, as well as hopefully another puppy raising prison in Wisconsin. A lot of things going on, and it's very exciting. Right now, because we don't have a weaning prison, our puppies are staying a little longer at our Whelping and Growth Center, our WAG Center out in New Germany. And it's going great out there. We have some amazing staff. We are hiring right now for a manager for the WAG Center, and we have some good applicants. So we're in the process of screening them and doing interviews with those people. So a lot happening, a lot of excitement, and we're really excited that you're here to join us tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lindy Luopa, and she can tell you a little more details of what's happening in our current prisons.
Thank you, Julianne, and thank you everyone for participating in this virtual conversation this evening. We really appreciate the opportunity to share information in this way and just make sure that everyone is up on all of the changes and all of, as Julianne said, all of the exciting new things that are happening within our organization. So I'm going to talk tonight a little bit about some of the changes over about the last year or 6 months that we've made to our prison training programs. Currently we have 9 prison programs, and we're hoping to add 10 or 11 yet this year. Would be wonderful. And a big way that we've changed how we handle training in our prisons this year is to include more of our instructors, our Minnesota puppy program instructors, in the prison training process. So we still do have a Wisconsin coordinator, that's Mona Elder, and she currently handles Jackson and the new Fox Lake prison. I'll talk a little bit about Fox Lake here in a moment. But beyond that, all of the other prisons are now handled and instructed by one of our puppy program instructors. So most of our puppy program instructors have one prison that they are in charge of. And they go to that prison, they visit that prison 1 day per week to provide instruction, check on the dogs, make sure everyone's healthy and that training is going well. And we do have one client services coordinator who is teaching at one of our prisons as well. So that's one big change. We used to have 2 prison coordinators, one handled Minnesota and one handled Wisconsin. And now we're kind of just splitting that up among the staff. It makes us, honestly, as a department, a bit more resistant to change. We can adapt a little bit more if need be. And it also allows our instructors to really have a longer term relationship with the dogs that are in their prisons. So they see those dogs, the full 8 months roughly that the dogs are being raised in those prison programs. And then they continue to work with those dogs once those dogs come out of prison and are placed in a raiser home. So that allows them to just kind of know the dogs a little bit better, have more of a background of, maybe what the dog has been working on, what maybe a particular dog has been struggling with, and how we can really work to support them in a better way. So it's a big, exciting change. It was a bit of a stretch for all of our program instructors to say, okay, I'm going to take on a prison and I'm going to have that experience and teach in that environment. It's obviously unique and different, but very, very rewarding. And all of our instructors are really having a great time within their prisons. And so it's been a nice change for our department. And then the next big thing is Fox Lake. So we added Fox Lake Correctional to our prison partners back in February. We moved a group of 6 dogs in February, and those dogs just came out, actually just went back in. They were on their first 2-week break from the prison program and just went back into prison today, this afternoon. So that's exciting. It is a bit of a journey to get dogs all the way to the eastern side of Wisconsin. So the logistics of that have been, interesting and kind of fun for us to work through. But that's been a wonderful, great new program. It took us a bit of time to really get that up and running. But things are going very well there. And I know some folks were a little bit concerned about the distance and having dogs so far on the other side of Wisconsin, but truly it has been a wonderful experience, and we haven't had really any issues with the dogs being in that location. The other big change that we made over the course of the last year is to our Chippewa Valley partnership. So Chippewa Valley Correctional is now piloting our early learning or early development kind of model. So as Julianne mentioned, we don't currently have a weaning prison. So the dogs are moving out of that Whelping and Growth Center, our WAG Center in New Germany, and then moving straight into Chippewa. So dogs are there anytime basically between about 7 to 8 weeks of age until roughly 10 to 14 weeks of age. So that kind of that depends on the length of time that they are there depends on the need for each individual litter. If we have razor homes, as we've always mentioned before, we would prefer dogs go into a home environment, as soon as possible. So typically around that 10-week of age mark. But if we're in a situation where that's not something that's possible, the dogs now have the ability to stay at Chippewa until 14 weeks of age. And that's been a wonderful program. We kind of are working with a volunteer, Erin Whitfield, over in Wisconsin, our long-term volunteer. She agreed to take on and pilot this new concept, and things have been going really, really well. So Erin is out there 1 day per week, just as a staff member would be, working with those puppies, working with the inmate handlers and staff. And so far that has been going very well. The volunteers who have taken dogs that are coming out of the Chippewa program and raising them before they go back into a different prison program, they've all had really great experiences with the puppies, and puppies have been well trained and ready to move into that home environment. So those, I think, are our big updates for the past year. We continue to really look at our program as a whole, make adjustments and improvements as we see opportunities to do so. But I know a lot of you have had input and have shared your thoughts and your opinions on how things are working. And so we appreciate that, because that definitely helps to move our program forward as well. So with that, I will go ahead and turn things back over to Karin. I know we have quite a few questions that you all submitted, so we want to make sure we have time to get to those.
Thanks, Lindy. That was a great overview, so appreciate you sharing all of that. Since we are talking so much about prison program this evening, we did have someone submit a question on some of the history of it, and I'm going to ask Julianne, because she's been with us for just a couple of years, recently celebrating an anniversary again. But what was the reason for the prison program, and how did it start?
We ended up, we had a volunteer many, many years ago, I couldn't even tell you the year, that also volunteered for a humane society, and that humane society was working with Faribault Prison. So they were putting dogs in for the inmates to, kind of do some training with and get them more adoptable. It wasn't going great. A lot of the dogs had behavior issues and things like that. And this particular volunteer was also a field trainer for us. So she would work with some of our distance clients that were down in southern Minnesota. So she reached out to us and said, hey, what would you think about this idea? There were prison programs out there. We weren't the first. And it sounded like a great idea. We started out by using our shelter dogs, so dogs that we would get from shelters, and using the prison for them. After about 6 months, we realized that that wasn't great either. You know, the shelter dogs needed some socialization elsewhere and things like that. So we switched to our dogs that were being raised in the program, and Faribault was our first prison that we worked with. After that, we did get different prisons approaching us. Some of them we approached, and just have grown from there.
Great, thank you. Lindy, gonna jump back to you and ask you how the inmate handlers are selected.
Great question. So we partner with the staff at each prison. And they really, staff, they know these inmate handlers obviously much better than we ever could. And so what typically happens is when they are starting a new program, they are taking in applications from the different inmate handlers who are interested, or inmates, I should say, who are interested in participating in the program. And they go through an entire interview process. They really want to verify that this is a good fit, both for the program, for the inmate handler themselves. And staff is really making those decisions, based on kind of the history of that inmate, and really appropriateness for the program. So we do rely pretty heavily on the prison staff to help make those decisions, and kind of keep tabs on those handlers throughout the process as well.
Great. I want to follow up on that and just ask about how many inmates are involved total.
So we do kind of numbers on inmates participating in the program annually. And so at the end of 2024, we had 224 inmates spread throughout our different prison programs. And typically that is per dog. Each dog has 2 inmate handlers, and then there are sitters that participate as well. So it may seem like a large number of handlers, but that's because we have sitters who are also helping out with, if those inmates have, another job, for example, the sitter will step in and take care of the dog and do some training with the dogs during that time frame.
Perfect. I want to remind people that you can go ahead and submit questions. We'll try to get to those, but we'd be happy to have some sent in to us. I will keep things rolling for now and go back to Jeff. We haven't heard from you in a while. So, Jeff, what would you say is the organization's greatest need right now, and what can those of us listening do to help?
That is an easy question because the answer has been the same since I started, and it will be the same until I leave. Volunteers. That is always going to be our greatest need. And in particular, puppy raisers, hosts who can keep dogs for longer periods of time. Most people who do this for us start by doing it short term and work their way up to longer term. So if you know of anybody, whether it's you or a friend or a neighbor or whatever, who might be interested in dipping their toe in the water and just trying to go through the process and take a dog for a few days and see what they think. That's how most people start. But no question that volunteers are and will always be our greatest need. And how can you help? Most people watching are probably already volunteers, but spread the word and encourage people. And if you haven't tried it yet, give it a go.
Excellent. Thank you. Lindy, I'm going to go back to you again. Just gave you a quick breather there, but are the dogs with different prisoners when they go multiple times?
It depends. Sometimes they do. Typically, however, dogs are usually not going back to the same prison. So if they were raised in a prison and do another, prison stay, maybe before final training or something of that nature, they're not always going back to the same prison. But sometimes they do. And typically we do try to change that up a little bit and give the dogs an experience with a different different handler, even though they may be in the same prison location. But sometimes there's a benefit to having the same handler revisit some things with the dogs. They already have that relationship with the dog, and that that working relationship truly, which is very important. But the answer really is it kind of depends, but typically not.
Okay, I'm gonna throw another one at you again. You're just getting all these double headers here so far, but does every Can-Do canine spend time in prison?
So we really do try to send as many dogs as possible into the prison programs. We do prefer if each dog has an opportunity to have that experience, just because we know that the breadth of knowledge and ability with our inmate handlers to really train to a high level, it's very beneficial. However, with that said, not every dog is a great fit for a prison program. So we're always really looking at the dogs as individuals and making that determination of whether or not prison is the appropriate environment for that individual dog. So occasionally you may see entire litters go into a prison program and one dog may stay out and be raised in a razor home. That's likely because there is something that we've seen that we think the dog would really truly benefit more from being out in the world and having those regular experiences and exposures. And there's some dogs, just from a logistical standpoint, that it doesn't make as much sense to send them to prison longer term. So poodles, for example, they need a lot of grooming. Having them in a prison program, it can be a challenge if we can't have someone come in and do the grooming. A lot of the equipment that's used for grooming is not allowed into a prison environment. So sometimes with poodles, they're not always appropriate for prison, but if they are, they may go for a shorter stay, just so we can make sure that we're meeting their needs to the best of our ability. But so short answer to that very long answer that I just gave is that we do try to send as many dogs as possible to prison if we can.
Very good. Jeff, I'm gonna go to you with someone wanting to know what is the start date of the newly signed bill on townhome and apartment training?
I believe it's August 1st. I'm almost positive of that.
I'm pretty sure from the press releases we've put out too that that's what I remember.
Good.
Okay. And follow up while I've got you here with a question of how are finances in 2025?
They're good right now. We are slightly ahead of budget. Now, everyone has to keep in mind that our budget for this year, we budgeted to have a deficit just based on where everything was at the end of last year. We finished last year with a surplus, which was nice. And so right on budget means we'll have a bit of a deficit at the end of the year. Our goal is to raise more than what's on budget and erase that deficit. It's a little over $100,000, and people are very generous, so I feel like we'll get there.
All right, thank you. I'm going to bounce back to Julianne for a question here. Julianne, do certain types of prisons, based on their security level, or whether they're state or federal or men's or women's, something like that, make for better partnerships with us?
Overall, I could say the biggest difference would be the security level. So our minimum security level, typically the inmates in those prisons are on their way out, so they don't have a lot of time left on their sentences, the majority of them that are there. So that makes it more difficult to have that prison work as a puppy raising prison where the dogs are there for a year or 8 months. So those are the ones that we kind of pursue as weaning prisons, because it's a shorter stay, it's very structured, do the same thing with each litter as you go. So we find that being more successful with those lower security, with a high turnover institutions. Otherwise, between men and women, there really isn't a difference. We have great handlers in both. So yeah, the biggest difference would just be that security level and how long the dogs stay there.
Makes sense. Lindy, maybe you can answer about how many hours a day do the prisoners train the dogs?
That can vary. They're working on, and we're really asking them to focus on shorter training sessions throughout the course of the day. So they do have scheduled classes where the inmate handlers will get together outside of the days that we have staff on site, and they will work, maybe a 30-minute class, 20-minute class, and kind of work together. Obviously there's training opportunities, just like in a home environment. There's training opportunities that pop up all the time throughout the day. So, even if they're moving from kind of one area to another, they're working on handler focus and loose leash walking. But that's, kind of as they're moving through the space, and then they do focus on giving the dogs some downtime as well. So just some time to be crated, to be resting, and to really process all of the information and all of the learning that's occurring throughout the day. So we do have them build those breaks into the training day as well. And then obviously on days when we have staff on site, that they'll do a little additional training. Those days are a little more training heavy, but otherwise it's really spread throughout the day. So not a truly dedicated time each day. They're just taking opportunities as they come to really work on the training.
Got it. Julianne, maybe you can explain to us how medical emergencies are handled for dogs in prison.
So just like our volunteers and our clients that have dogs, we do provide our emergency number, our emergency line for prison staff. So if there is an emergency after hours or even during the day, but then it comes into the puppy program staff. But they call that and it gets handled like an emergency would be handled in a client home or a volunteer home. If it's we need to get a dog to the vet in an urgent way, when we set up new prison programs, we do talk to the staff about that they have people in the area that can be called at any hour if a dog needs to get in somewhere right away. So in the instances where maybe the prison feels they don't have enough staff to cover things, or overnight they're typically very run with a shorter staff, and they can't have somebody leave. We also have some where we have volunteers in the area that have agreed to be our emergency call if we need to get a dog to the vet after hours or in an urgent way.
Okay. Jeff, got one for you here. A question that comes in from something we had yesterday, our Bob FM Fetchathon on the radio. Someone asked if we have final numbers for how much money we raised.
I believe we raised just short of $4,000, and some of those contributions were people who signed up to give on a monthly basis. So, and a bunch of them, most of them, the vast majority were brand new names for us. So we just really appreciated that opportunity, not just to raise some money, which was great, but also to raise our profile, and maybe we'll get a few new clients or volunteers or longer term supporters out of it.
Okay. Lindy, I'm gonna come to you for this one. Do you regularly do some type of approved appreciation for the prison staff and handlers?
We do. We do an annual appreciation for our inmate handlers. And that's a really great question. We haven't in the past done anything formal for staff. It's been more informal and kind of thank yous here and there. So I actually love that idea. I think we'll incorporate that moving forward, because the staff really is just as involved in this program as the inmate handlers. But yes, we do. We have an annual thank you that is very structured and formal. And then we are doing kind of a smaller thank yous throughout the course of the year as well.
Excellent. I'm going to stay with you again for another question here. Do prison break dogs need to be picked up at the prison? And is the average break 2 weeks?
So yes, the average break is 2 weeks. We try to get the dogs. So if dogs are raised in prison, they move in at about 16 weeks of age and they stay there for an 8-month period. So once the dogs have been in that razor prison for about 6 months, or excuse me, 3 months, we'll move them out for a 2-week break. And then again at 6 months, we'll move them out for a second 2-week break. And it depends on the prison, whether or not dogs are picked up at that location or whether the dogs are coming back here to our facility in New Hope for pickup. Some prisons have a little more flexibility with staffing. It does take a bit of staff effort for dogs to be picked up by hosts at that location. It's not as quick and as simple as loading dogs into a van and sending them on their way. And so it depends on kind of the staffing availability for the prison, also how much time they have allotted for that to take place, and then also the security level of the prison as well. Some prisons we can't have members of the public arriving to pick up dogs. It needs to be one person with our pre-approved vehicle and all of that. So it really kind of depends on the prison. So when dogs are going out on 2-week breaks, that is something that we share with our hosts ahead of time, whether pickup will happen at a prison or at our facility.
Okay, thanks for those details. Jeff, can you tell us the target date? Please tell us the target date for breaking ground for our new facility in New Hope. We all want to know.
Probably late next year, possibly early 2027. It depends upon the capital campaign. And the board will have to make a decision. The board and staff will have to make a decision at what point are we ready to move forward, even though we don't have $10 million in hand. We will want to be very confident that we're going to get there. So I am guessing it'll be maybe October of next year. Otherwise, we may wait until March of the following year.
And to tag along with that, I'm going to go to Julianne because someone was asking what will happen with the WAG Center facility once that new building starts.
Once the new building is open and operational, everything from WAG will be moved here into New Hope on site here, and then the WAG property will be put up for sale.
Okay. Lindy, hopefully I gave you enough time to catch your breath again, because here we go. What time do prison dogs typically have their last potty out at night and first potty out in the morning? This person says it would be helpful to know what the 12-month-old dogs we get out of prison are used to.
Goodness, that's a good question. And I feel like my answer to many of these questions tonight has been, it depends. And I feel like here we go again. But it really does. It depends on each individual institution and what type of movement they allow at what time of day. I will say prisons tend to their last out, their slumber time is probably much earlier than we would expect in our homes, and their wake up time is much earlier as well. So, but that is information that when dogs move out of their razor prison, we will share prison notes with you, and that has very detailed information as far as kind of their potty routine, their schedule, and what times of day they have been able to go out and do their business. So that is information that we'll share with you with each individual dog that you receive. But prison wake ups, yeah, they're usually quite early in the morning, probably much earlier than most hosts would prefer to get up. And one, just to kind of piggyback on that, one thing that is important is for our dogs to learn to adjust to different schedules as well. So when they move back out into a razor home, it is okay to start to expect that they adapt to your wake up and your sleep patterns.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, having gotten some of those notes myself, it's like, really, that's what you're expecting? Okay. Julianne, I'm gonna go to you with this. It seems like dogs are staying in final training longer than they did years ago. I'm wondering if there's a reason for that and what it might be.
At this point, yeah, I mean, many years ago, the theory prior to me becoming the director of training was kind of get the dogs 75 to 80% of the way there or trained for the client, and then the rest was kind of personalization and working with the client through the rest of it. In the past, even with hearing dogs, we didn't pre-train them, which we do now. So we do a lot more upfront training prior to placing them. That being said, we are working on setting some benchmarks for the in for final training dogs to try to make sure they're hitting the benchmarks at the times we expect. And ideally would like to see them, be done here with final training in 3 to 4 months. And again, that varies, as Lindy mentioned. It depends, right? Depending on kind of what skills that dog came in with, depends on what that dog's talents are. Typically, diabetes assist dogs take quite a bit longer than autism assist dogs to prepare for a client. So there is a lot of variability with what we're working with the dogs, and giving the dogs the time that they need to get to where we want them to be prior to placing them with a client.
Okay, thank you. Lindy, going back to some of those details about the daily life in the prison setting, you've covered maybe some of this a little bit, but someone was wondering, have we ever done a video about the day of the life of a dog in prison? Just they're wondering if the prisoners can really come and go freely from their cells to let the dog out of the bathroom. How does that process work with them going out when they need to and so forth?
Yeah, so I don't believe we've ever done a video of that nature. And, for young dogs that really need to go out on a very regular basis, those are institutions that we're looking at that have a little bit more inmate handler flexibility. So the ability to, take the dog out multiple times, every 30 minutes, every hour if need be, bring them out in the middle of the night. We want to have more flexibility when the dogs are younger. Most of the razor prisons, dogs are kind of going out on, one last potty break before bed, and then not again until the morning. So we want to make sure that when we're looking at the kind of how we want to utilize each prison program, that we're making sure we're meeting the needs that the dogs have in that regard. And most of them do have some nice grassy green space, or a combination. So they may have some grassy area with some, cement or asphalt sidewalks or something of that nature. So the dogs are getting the opportunity to kind of experience both of those situations. But have not done a day in the life video, and I think there's some logistical concerns to probably doing that, as far as getting video equipment into a prison setting and things of that nature. But it's an interesting idea.
Okay. I'm gonna stay with you for another one here. Just wondering, with some of those inmate handlers, are there a few at least that have a longer history with us of maybe taking successive dogs in a row?
Yes, absolutely. So we do have a fair share, actually, of inmate handlers who have been in the program for quite some time, have taken and raised multiple dogs. And those are kind of our mentors in our prison program. So those are the folks that really help the newer inmate handlers get up and running, help explain the program, and just like all of our volunteers, everyone wants to know why we do things the way that we do it. And so those more experienced handlers really help to provide that information, and answer questions when staff is not around.
Okay. Keep those questions coming, everyone. We do look like we'll have time for some more as things are shaking out here. So I am going to go back to Julianne for this, with someone wondering, hey, how are things going at the WAG Center? Are you getting enough volunteers out there?
Things at WAG are amazing. We have such a great group of staff. as we speak. There's staff there taking care of the 4 litters of puppies that we have there right now. The most recent one just born this last Monday. It's a wonderful setting. The staff is amazing. The dogs are doing fabulous. So it's going really, really well. That being said, we're always looking for new volunteers. So if it's something you're interested in, I know it always sounds fun. Let's cuddle puppies and all of that, but puppies make a mess. So there's a lot of cleaning involved too, but we absolutely welcome new volunteers. And we have some very dedicated volunteers right now that are signing up for shifts weekly, if not more than once a week. And we couldn't do it without them and all the new people coming along. So please do sign up.
Well, on that subject, there is this question also for you, Julianne. Would we ever allow a former inmate handler, who's now out of prison, obviously, to work for us or to volunteer with us?
We actually do have some that volunteer with us and have over the years. Certainly would look at applications from former inmate handlers if they're interested in positions we have open. They bring a lot of, especially ones that have been involved with our programs for a long time, bring a lot of experience to training, and they know our system and our methods. So absolutely would be happy to get resumes from them.
I'm going to maybe ask Lindy, because someone's just specifically says, hey, how can I get involved? What's the process, Lindy?
The process is easy. Really, just visit the Can Do Canines website, candocanines.org, and you can fill out a volunteer application. That's really the first step. We take it from there. We will reach out and talk to you more about the different volunteer opportunities. We always have hosting opportunities available, as Jeff mentioned, anywhere from a couple of days of hosting all the way up through raising for 2 to 2.5 years a commitment. And we also, with our prison programs, need volunteers who are interested in hosting the dogs for those 2-week breaks that I mentioned earlier. So we have some volunteers who are just very interested in helping those dogs get those worldly exposures for that 2-week period. Many of the dogs in prison, they haven't loaded or unloaded in a car for a long time. They haven't seen children. They haven't seen people on bicycles or, kites flying, all kinds of things that happen out in the world. So giving the dogs that opportunity is needed and very helpful. So fill out an application and we will help get you started.
All right, Jeff, I see you're still awake there, so I'm going to toss you one. Whatever happened to the TV ad for volunteers that you showed at the Fetching Ball Gala last year?
So it is right here waiting for someone to fund it to get on television. What a great question somebody asked. Yeah, some of you have seen it. It's a 30-second ad that we had made for us last year to raise our profile and encourage people to volunteer for us. And we will get it on TV. My goal is still to get it on TV this year, but I'm always cautious about, we're going to have to spend $50,000 to get it on cable in any meaningful way. And I'm only going to do that when I feel like we're, a little bit ahead of budget. So I think we'll get there this year. If not, then we'll get there next year. We got some free TV time from Google during the Super Bowl. Some of you probably saw that. They actually created a 30-second ad for their Gemini product and highlighted us. So we figure that'll carry us until we can get the cable TV ad on.
Excellent. Julianne, circling back to you, how are we doing placing dogs? Do we have enough clients for the dogs we're training? Are there waiting lists still? And if yes, what type of dogs are most requested?
We have been getting a lot of applications in, so that's great. As always, because with autism assist placements, we do a pre-app, and that is our longest list, but that's not fully applied and approved people. Of people that are have applied and are approved, our longest waiting list typically is mobility assist. Most of our placements go mobility. So that's probably our longest. But yeah, we've had quite an uptick in applications in the last 6 to 12 months. We've seen a large increase in applications.
Okay, thank you. Lindy, I'm gonna try this one on with you. Can clients volunteer while they wait to be matched with a dog?
That is actually a question I'm going to turn back to Julianne,
I wasn't
unfortunately.
sure.
Sorry, Julianne. We do have a lot of families, perhaps, who are waiting for an autism assist dog who will volunteer while they're in that waiting period, and that has not been a problem. We've done that on several occasions. But Julianne, maybe you can speak a little bit more to other types of clients.
Yeah, we have had clients in the past that were waiting for a dog that have volunteered. We try to make it very clear that any dog we place with them as a volunteer will not be the dog we place with them as a client. So making sure that we're able to pick the right fit dog, not just a dog, that is in their house and they fell in love with that dog. So that's, we have long conversations first and make sure that everybody understands kind of the boundaries and the parameters of that. As soon as we feel we have a good match, then, we'd move the volunteer dog out of their home and focus then on the new service dog.
All right, thanks for tag teaming that one, you two. Julianne, I'm going to stay with you though, because you mentioned the WAG Center and someone was wondering about the plan with breeding so that there's not too many puppies in need of volunteers at any one time. And also then, do you always find volunteers for all the pups before they go to prison programs?
Oh, see, Lindy and I can tag team this
Yeah,
one too.
again.
So as when we breed a dog, we aren't going to be needing a volunteer home for that puppy for 4 months, right? So I do communicate with Lindy and her team of where are we at, if we're really struggling, and I've got multiple girls that have come into season. Do we skip 1, 2, all of them? So it is a collaborative thing that we do, communicating all the time and talking about what can we make work and are there concerns. We also need to make sure we don't overwhelm our WAG facility or our staff there. So trying to make sure that we don't have too many puppies at one time, especially all of a similar age or that kind of thing. So like right now we do have 4 litters, but it's going very smoothly. One of the litters will be leaving in the next week or 2, and then the next one leaves after that. So we have kind of a flow happening right now, which is working pretty well. Lindy, you want to chime in on some of that?
I do. So that's really where our Chippewa Valley program comes into play. They have the ability to keep the dogs until they are up to 14 weeks of age. So if we do have a litter of puppies that maybe need 1 or 2 puppies, needs a place to be, they can stay at Chippewa Valley and continue to get exposures. A lot of the staff at Chippewa, they're also volunteers, so they have the ability to take the dogs out during the day, give them exposures to the world, and still ensure that they're getting the same kind of care and consideration and training that the dogs that are in homes are getting as well. So that's really why we're piloting that program, is to see if we can really work in tandem between our prison programs as well as our razor hosts to ensure that all the dogs have the best possible start before they move into a prison program, a longer term prison program.
All right, great job, you two. Jeff, I'm gonna put this your way and I'll see what you do with it here. What other marketing efforts are you utilizing to attract more volunteers?
So you get to do cleanup on this question, Carl.
Fair enough.
Well, we've tried a little bit of everything, but we do like to focus a bit rather than just throw everything out there. But we have social media is obviously a really big deal for us. we're a visual organization. We have the best visuals of any nonprofit out there because we have puppies and people. And so social media is very valuable to us. I know we've done some billboards because of that. We have our open house, which we've got one coming up on Saturday. Yeah, on Saturday, from noon to 2. And we do those quarterly or 3 times a year. You can clean up that one, but
That was quarterly.
yeah, quarterly. We have an outreach coordinator who spends a lot of time just getting out to organizations and tabling at events. We spend a lot of time really across the organization visiting organizations, whether it's corporations or groups of students or whatever it is, to bring our dogs out to them. That's I guess, a form of marketing. And then I would say, really for us, one of the most important things, and we've really tried to ramp this up, is what's known as earned media. So you're not spending money on a TV ad or a radio ad, but you're getting on the news, or you're getting on a radio program, or you're getting a story in the newspaper. Obviously, Karen spends a lot of her time getting that, and we've seen tremendous success with that. And we'll continue. We just hope that continues to grow. What would you add, Karen?
I think you did a really excellent job answering that. The only thing I might just even add is, along with all of those efforts, we're really making an intentional push toward putting a volunteer angle on things. So yes, we have the open house coming up on Saturday, for instance. Today we had a reporter here and was talking to a volunteer that hosts dogs, saying, what has been your experience and why has it been so great, and what is it about volunteering here that is special and different? And if you want to do this, come to the open house to learn more. So we're always trying to build that in, and not just saying, hey, we have this open house, or we have this event, or we have this going on, yay news, but put it in that perspective of the volunteer. So I think that's been a little bit of a shift that we've made in recent years. So okay, I'm gonna get out of the hot seat and back to my usual job here. And we have just 8 minutes left, so we'll get through a few more questions. But Julianne, what is the process for a client-provided dog, or we call it owner-provided dog sometimes, to be trained by the amazing staff, their words, not mine, at Can Do Canines?
So we are one of the organizations in the country, and there aren't very many that do work with clients that have their own dog. The dog and client then both go through an application process. So both have to complete the application process and be approved for the program. Where I think some misunderstanding comes in is often people will think that we'll take their dog and train it for them, and we don't do that. We do have staff that work with them and guide the owner of the dog in the training. So we do have some requirements that the dog is doing some kind of work for the client when they apply, but then we help fine tune and add additional skills working with them. So it is at least a 6-month process of training with an owner provided team prior to them certifying.
Great. I'm going to stay with you here for a second. And this is someone asking, when somebody hosts a dog as a raiser or sitter, have you ever considered providing a short history of where the puppy has been, example, the Rochester prison, then homestay, etc.?
Well, you can ask me that, but I think I'm going to toss it to Lindy.
Yes.
We to date have not given kind of a long history of where that dog has been. Typically, if a dog is coming out of a prison program, we share that information and the notes that we have from that set of inmate handlers. But that is certainly something that we could consider, giving a little bit more of a timeline or a history for that dog. So that's an interesting suggestion. We'll think about that.
Lindy, this came in. I know this is a tricky one, but someone's asking how many dogs are in the program currently.
I can't say currently. Same as the earlier question about the number of inmates that are participating. We do kind of our final counts at the end of each year, but at the end of 2024, we had 128 dogs participating in the program. And I would say we're on course to be very close to that this year, just a little bit higher.
Okay, and to be clear, that's just the prison program, not in our training program.
Correct.
So people
Correct.
are-
In our training program, we have on average about 250 dogs in training at any given point in time. But yes, in the prison program specifically, we had 128 dogs last year.
Julianne, can you help us understand a little bit more about the general numbers regarding placement percentage versus career changed? And then they also ask how many of the pups that are whelped with us go on all the way to, yeah, similar question, career change versus placements.
Yeah, typically, so our purpose-bred dogs do have a higher success rate, so lower career change rate. My goal is always to be, I'd like to see at least 60%, ideally a little more, of the dogs go to clients. So that doesn't count the dogs that we keep and hold back for breeding. And then obviously there are career change dogs as well, but that's always the goal I'm shooting for, is at least 60% to clients.
Okay, very good. Jeff, a question or two for you again. Do we have any puppy program volunteers on the board of directors?
Yes. We have 3 very active puppy program volunteers and another that is in the process to become one. And I just talked to one today who said that they are probably going to go through the process. So should that happen, we'll have 5.
Okay. The answer is yes. Lindy, I'm not sure if you know this answer, but someone suggested for marketing, how about car window decals to get out the word about volunteering with Can Do Canines? Or are these already available to volunteers?
I know we used to have magnets. We did magnets
Yeah.
back in the day, but no, we currently do not. But I think from a, I think I would toss that idea over to the marketing department to see if that's something that they could make reality.
Yeah, you saw how I was trying to just get you in on that. I love the idea. Yes, no, it's something that we've talked about, and I think we will continue to talk about too as budget allows. So great. Just a couple more minutes here. So let me see what else we have. Oh, Julianne, someone's asking for a little clarification of what other type of dog is there other than a quote purpose-bred dog?
So we do get dogs that are donated by breeders. So all of our poodles come from donations. We don't breed poodles. Up until, well, currently golden retrievers, if they're purebred golden retrievers, are coming from breeders, although we did just breed one of our goldens to another golden. So we're going to have our first full golden retriever litter, hopefully, if she ends up pregnant. So we do get donations from breeders out there. And we do use shelter dogs when we can. We are always on the lookout for some shelter dogs that will work for us.
Okay. Lindy, I want to ask you this one. Do we ever have any disciplinary issues with inmate handlers, or have we ever had to kick anyone out of the program? And maybe again, this Julianne's historical knowledge as well. I'll let you two slug that one out.
Sounds good. Yes, we have disciplinary concerns do come up. I will say, however, they are not very common. Most inmate handlers are really excited about being part of the program, and staff in the institutions, the dogs and the handlers are always under a very watchful eye from staff. And staff is very quick to remove any handler from the program who is inappropriate in any way. And so the inmate handlers know that. That's pretty clear in the prison programs. And so from the inmate perspective, most of them are on their best behavior because they want to be part of the program. You know, it gives them really something to work with and focus on each day. And they get special perks, right? They're outside a little bit more than the average inmate in most institutions. So, but yes, it does come up and things are dealt with very quickly. Prison staff is always in very quick communication with us to let us know exactly what occurred if we don't have a staff member who was on site and saw something happen. Very often they can even go back and review video if need be, if it's more of a rumor type situation of one handler saying, hey, I witnessed this. They can go back and actually take a look at that and see what actually occurred. But staff is very quick to inform us and let us know what's occurring. And they've even, you know, inmates have been moved to different institutions as well if needed, if there's anything that was inappropriate that was occurring. So Julianne, I'll let you add anything that you may have.
Yeah, I will say the vast majority of the time that a handler is removed from the program is not anything related to the dog. Usually it's they broke some other rule, and they know it. They're very strict. You break any rule, you know, and you will get kicked out of the program. So even if not related to the dog at all. So it's been very, very rare that there's a concern about whether it's handling of a dog or behavior around a dog.
Okay, well, I have 8:01. We promised to wrap this up on time for everyone's sake. And thankfully, electricity cooperated with us. We didn't lose anything. Unless anyone has any final words, I will close things up and thank you all for being with us tonight. And we hope to see you at the open house or sometime soon again. So have a great night, everybody.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.